Arise, Queens. This is the All Queens Army, where women are provided with the tools you need to overcome your fears, face your flaws, and experience breakthroughs as you develop self-esteem so strong you emanate royalty. Now, for your host and commander of the All Queens Army, Breizy Time.
Welcome to the All Queens Army podcast. This is your girl, your host, Breizy Time. I am here today with another dope episode for the Queens. Yes, honey, it is another dope-ass, beautiful-ass, motivational Monday, and the Queens are in the queendom, honey. I'm so excited to be talking to you, Queens, because you know you're all in my heart. I appreciate you, Queens, so much. Can't wait to jump into the wonderful detail and content and motivation that I have for you, Queens, today. I'm sure that you've already read what today's topic is, and it is a good one, okay? We're going to be talking about how to create healthy emotional boundaries, okay? Before we jump into the detail and before I motivate the shit out of you, because you know I am, I want to touch on a couple really quick things, so give me 1 minute, okay? So, I already told you, Queens, during the last 2 episodes that we have a new website. Yes, we do, honey. I have got to continue to upgrade our community for the Queens because we're growing, so we have a new website, okay? It's still allqueensarmy.com, but it is redesigned, it is new and improved, and it has so much good stuff. One of the new things is I started a blog for the Queens. Yes, ma'am. It is a motivational blog. A new blog drops every Thursday at 6 a.m. The perfect time for you to grab a quick motivational read while you're drinking your coffee or drinking your tea or whatever the case may be. It's a great morning motivational read. So check out the blog. And also remember the last 2 episodes, I've told you, Queens, that I dropped an e-course for you because I promised the Queens during season 2 that I was going to create an e-course. With the e-courses, it goes into more detail, it gives a lot more depth, and it gives you an opportunity to move at your own pace. So I created 5 e-courses, and I had only dropped 1 2 weeks ago because the idea was that we were going to drop a new course throughout season 3. Well, I've made a decision to drop all 5 e-courses right now because my Queens just can't wait, okay? You cannot wait to start changing your life, to start learning how to evolve, to start learning how to turn your pain into power, honey. You Queens need to be able to do that now, okay? So as of today, as of this moment, all 5 e-courses are out on the website. I created them with love. I did a lot of research and put a lot of time into it. They are free for my Queens. So I'm super excited about that. Just wanted to make that announcement, okay? The last thing, if you have not yet subscribed to the All Queens Army podcast, go to allqueensarmy.com, click on the subscribe tab, and you can subscribe via Apple Podcasts, Google Play, SoundCloud, Spotify, iTunes, or YouTube because we are on all of those platforms. Okay, so now that we're done with all of that, let's get into it. So what are we talking about today, Queens? We're going to be talking about how to create healthy boundaries. I'm going to educate you on how to do that. So what are healthy boundaries? I always want to take some time to explain what the topic is that we're talking about so that we're all on the same page because some people may think differently of boundaries than what I do. So I want to make sure that we're on the same page, okay? So what are healthy boundaries? Healthy boundaries are guidelines that you create for yourself. They help you determine how to respond to others and how to allow other people to treat you. They also set the standard and the tone for what you tolerate from other people and from circumstances too, because boundaries aren't just to manage people and what people are allowed to do to you. Boundaries are also set for situations and circumstances, okay? So that you make sure that you create healthy boundaries around yourself so that circumstances and situations cannot also take advantage of you. A lot of people have this misconception that boundaries are all about relationships, right? Or all about like dealing with people, dealing with family, dealing with a boyfriend or a girlfriend or friends or spouses. And it's not. Boundaries are just literally little individual fences that you build around yourself where you're basically saying when enough is enough. Hey, these are lines that I don't allow people to cross. These are things that I don't allow people to do to me. These are things that I do not participate in. These are things that I don't like and that don't make me feel good. So those are what boundaries are. So they're not just specifically about relationships or people. They can also be about situations. Now, let me give you an example of a situation that actually just happened today while I was at work. This example is actually about a person, but it's also about a circumstance. At my job, there is another guy who does the same job that I do, but he does the job in Pennsylvania. Essentially, we have the same exact job. We report to the same senior vice president. So senior vice president that we report to will frequently go to my coworker, my peer, and she will ask him to do lots of shit, reports, pull data, just all kinds of stuff that really have nothing to do with the job that we do. And she never asked me to do those things. And so sometimes me and my peer will have a conversation and he'll say, why do I always get stuck with having to do the extra work? Or why do I always get stuck with having to do the busy work? Or even, why am I getting stuck with doing some of the things that she's supposed to be doing and she never asked you to do it? And I said, well, you know why she doesn't ask me to do it? Because she knows that it's not going to be that easy of a sell to get me to do something because I'm already super busy. I already have a lot on my plate. I already have people that I'm responsible for. I already have stuff that makes me get to work at 6 o'clock in the morning sometimes and have to stay to work until 6 o'clock in the evening sometimes. I'm already strapped. I'm already at my limit for how much work I can take on and still be sane. So when she comes to me, well, when she has in the past, and she's asked me to take on more, I politely, respectably, and professionally say, unfortunately, I don't have the bandwidth to take on any more. Whereas though my coworker will just keep doing it, right? He's more of a people pleaser kind of person. He's super duper sweet. So he'll just continue to take on more and take on more and take on more. And he'll always say yes, yes, yes. And you know why he does it? Because he wants her to like him and he wants her to perceive him as a hard worker and a team player. And all of that's great, but it's not great when it starts to stress you out. It's not great when you're starting to take on more than what you can handle and then you feel obligated to do it because now this person is expecting it from you because you've said yes so many times, or you feel obligated to do it because it's your boss who's asking you to do it. That's an example of not having healthy boundaries because my coworker is so nervous to tell my boss that he is not able to do all of that additional work or that she's asking too much of him. He's not comfortable doing it for whatever reason. So that's a situation where it's not just about the person who's crossing your personal boundaries. It's also the situation that's crossing your personal boundaries. It's a situation at work. Okay. So yes, it involves a person, but it's also a situation and a circumstance. So I wanted to share that example with you, queens, because again, boundaries are all about making sure that you're creating a way so that things that bother you or overwhelm you or frustrate you do not get in. You have to create those invisible fences around you so that that stuff doesn't get in and start to disturb your emotional well-being. Here are some signs that you do not have effective and healthy boundaries. First one, if you constantly feel overwhelmed. So that's just like the example that I gave with my coworker who feels overwhelmed and frustrated that he keeps getting more work, more work, more work. If you feel overwhelmed, you're probably not exercising any healthy boundaries where people aren't stepping over and stepping on your toes. Here's another. Do you get sick a lot? There was a point in my life where I used to get sick a lot, and then I know a couple other people who get sick all the time. When you get sick a lot, sometimes emotionally you're taking on too much. Your emotional state is so beat down, you're so stressed out that your immune system starts to become weak. So if you're a person who just catches a cold all the time, every couple of months you're always sick, you may want to check your personal boundaries and make sure that you're not taking on too much or that you're not doing too much and you're not stretching yourself too thin. Here's another sign of not having healthy boundaries. You say yes to too many things. That one goes right with the example I just gave. You're saying yes too much. And sometimes you're even saying yes to the shit that you don't even want to do or you don't even like. That's a problem. Here's another. You have trouble or feel guilty saying no. That's a big one. I used to struggle with that a little bit with my son, like being a mom, and I was a single mom for so long. I was always trying to make up for what I felt like he missed out by me not being married and not being with his dad. So I had a hard time saying no. Yeah, once he got to be a teenager, I got over that shit real quick, okay? But if you have trouble saying no, like you feel guilty saying no, you may have an issue with your personal boundaries. boundaries, okay? Here's another. People say things to or around you that you don't like or that make you feel uncomfortable. A lot of people won't understand that that actually happens because you lack personal boundaries, like you have none, so people just do whatever. People don't think that those two things tie into each other, and they do, and let me explain why. There's a situation a couple weeks ago where one of my cousins was telling me that someone was talking to her about another one of my cousins. And I said, well, that's a personal boundary issue that person's crossing. Like, why does the person talking shit to you about your cousin feel comfortable talking about your cousin? So either you're talking shit about the other cousin with that person and that makes them feel comfortable, or they just have no respect for your boundaries and your relationships, that they just literally feel like they can say whatever they want. Because here's one thing I can tell you. There is no one who would ever feel comfortable enough to come to me and talk shit about anyone in my family or any of my friends, because I don't play that shit. Don't talk to me about it. You're not even going to get the energy to feel comfortable enough that you think that you can say something about my family or my friends to me. You just can't do it. So if people feel comfortable saying or doing things in your presence that are disrespectful, that make you feel uncomfortable, it means that you have not created a boundary to let them know that this shit is not going to be tolerated. Your energy is not speaking for you. That means that you need to work on your personal boundaries. Okay, I just have two more signs that you have to do some work on your personal boundaries. Do you feel unheard? Like, do you just feel like you're talking and no one's paying you any attention? Like, it goes in one ear and out the other. A lot of times this happens in relationships, like with couples, like with spouses. A lot of times it also happens with children and parents, right? You just talk. These damn kids just not listening. That's a personal boundary issue, because that means that they feel comfortable enough ignoring your ass, and that's not okay. Especially not for the ones that you're putting a roof over their head and food in their mouth. No, ma'am. All right, here's the last one. Do you feel consumed by drama? Now, this one I can relate to as well, because a few years ago, before I really started doing the work on myself, I used to constantly feel like there was just always drama and issues and gossip and problems around me. And baby, I learned real quick that I needed to shut all that shit down. If you feel constantly consumed by drama, it may mean that you don't have personal boundaries that basically say that you're not inviting other people's shit to be dumped into your lap. Because honey, let me tell you something. Life is already chock full of problems that you have to deal with personally for yourself, for your immediate family, maybe for your children, on your job or your business. You do not have enough energy to take on everyone's problems all the time. Not everyone should feel comfortable coming to you and dumping their shit on your lap. This is actually something that me and my husband used to go through, because my husband is super duper 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 nice. Way nicer than me. And I'm really not even joking. My husband is so nice, and he would just seem to attract people who just wanted to dump their drama and dump their baggage and dump their issues on him and exchange their bad energy for his good energy. Baby, we had to shut that shit down, honey. We can't do that. It is unhealthy. It will put you in a place where your emotional well-being will take a toll. And when you start taking a toll on your emotional well-being, it starts chipping away at your self-worth and your self-esteem. Queens, I'm telling you, season 3, it's going to sound like I'm a broken record, because the theme of this season is all about self-worth and self-esteem and confidence and building yourself up, because so many of us as women have lost ourselves through all of the things that we go through of life. Just normal shit. I'm not saying that there's been anything crazy or monumental. For some of you, it may have been, but just the everyday stuff that we as women have to go through and take on and fix and resolve, right? We're the everything for everybody. And after you go through all of that stuff, sometimes what you have left of yourself is not much. So that's what All Queens Army is all about. All Queens Army is here for you to come to and plug into All Queens Army and rebuild yourself. Rebuild your shit, because everyone outside of you, everyone else around you, friends, family members, kids, spouses, jobs, businesses, co-workers, they're all pulling at you because you're the shit. So when you come here to All Queens Army and you plug into the podcast and you plug into the e-courses and you plug into the blog and you plug into the social media content, when you plug in, it is to rebuild your self-esteem. So a lot of the topics that we're going to be talking about in season 3 are going to have a theme of rebuilding your self-worth and your self-esteem, okay? So I'm sorry, Queens, real quick. Let me double back. My bad. Stay with me. I have one more sign that you do not have effective and healthy boundaries. One more sign. I just thought about this one, literally just popped into my head, so I'm sorry. Let me double back. Here's one last one. If you feel taken advantage of, unappreciated, or used, that's another sign that you have to work on your personal boundaries, okay? And the reason that this makes the list is because, especially for the taken advantage piece of it and the unappreciated and the used, is because you have to make sure that you're creating boundaries so that people don't feel comfortable enough taking your kindness for weakness. Okay, so people don't feel comfortable enough knowing that you're a nice person, knowing that you're compassionate, knowing that you have a good heart, knowing that you would take the shirt off of your back to help someone. You have to make sure that you protect that part of yourself. And we'll talk about that a little bit more towards the end of the episode, okay? Let's get into the part of how do we make this happen. Now that we know what the problem is, now that we've identified that, hey, we may need to work on our personal boundaries, how do we actually do that? So the first thing that you want to do in order to start creating boundaries for yourself is identify the people and situations that upset you, drain you, or hurt you. Anything that doesn't feel like it resonates with your spirit, write that down. Just start a quick list and write it down. Okay, so here's what you're going to do next. For each person or situation that you've identified in the previous answer, write down what it is about that person or that thing or that situation that made you put them on the list. What is it about the situation? What is it about the circumstance that makes you feel a little icky? Identify it, write it down. Okay, now the third thing. So for each person or situation that you wrote down above, write down a solution for how you can prevent that person, the situation, or the thing from crossing a line. What can you do? How can you stop it from happening? Now, this one will confuse some people a little bit. So I'm going to give you some examples of some solutions because we kind of went through a little bit of an exercise like this last week where I said, well, write down a solution. And a lot of times people will say, well, Bree, if I knew the solution, I wouldn't be listening to the podcast looking for answers, okay? So here's the thing that I want you queens to know. I can't always give you a solution unless I know specifically what the issue is. So after we're done with this exercise, and even for people who listened last week, if I'm giving you a suggestion or a tip, and one of the suggestions and tips is to write down a solution, if you just don't know a solution, I gave you last week some ideas and some ways that you could come up with a solution, but just know that you can always reach out to me. Again, I'd have to know a little bit more about the situation to be able to give you a potential solution, but I don't know what your issue is because I'm the only one talking on the podcast, right? So if you have a situation that you want me to know about because you just have no idea what the solution is to even finish out this exercise, just email me, okay? I always give out my email address at the end of the episode, and I will today as well. Email me if you feel comfortable enough talking about it, and I'll help you and give you a solution. There's plenty of queens who reach out to me via DM or email, and they talk to me and they'll tell me a little bit about what's going on with them, and I'll give them some quick advice. So, if you want to do that, feel free, feel comfortable doing that, okay? So back to number 3, because I went off on a little bit of a tangent. So for each person or situation that you wrote down previously, write down a solution, how you can prevent the person or the situation from crossing the line. Like, what can you do to prevent the person or the situation from happening? Well, if it's a person, prevent them from doing what they're doing that you don't like. If it's a situation, write down a solution to how you may be able to prevent it from happening. So here's some examples, like I said, because this one gets tough and people get mad at me and say, oh, I don't know how to do it. So here's some examples of some of the things you can do. Communicate is a big one. Communication is the number one way to set a boundary or create a boundary. You have to tell people what you don't like, what you don't want, and what you're not willing to tolerate. Okay, so if you don't want someone to do something to you, tell them. If you don't like the way something feels, tell them. If you don't tolerate or won't tolerate something anymore, tell the person, period. It's just simple communication. If you don't feel comfortable enough having the conversation, send them a text. If you don't feel comfortable enough sending a text, send an email, write a letter, do something. But you have to voice verbally how you feel. That's the first and the biggest and most effective way to create a boundary, is for you to communicate, hey, I'm not dealing with this. Hey, I don't like this. Hey, I won't tolerate this. You have to be able to say that, okay? Stand up for yourself and tell a person, no, this is not going to happen. That's the best way. The second thing that you can do, if it's a person who's calling and at the moment you just can't deal with whatever drama or issues they're going to bring, don't answer the damn phone. If it's a person that you just don't want to tolerate, then don't talk to them anymore. If it's a certain place that you go and you just don't like the energy, you don't like the way it feels, then don't go to the place anymore. If it's certain types of guys or certain types of women that you're dating and they're the ones crossing your personal boundary, then make sure you decide not to date those types of people anymore. Don't entertain certain types of people. Don't talk to certain types of people. Don't engage in certain types of energy. Don't have conversations with people that you don't want to have. Don't go where you don't want to go. Don't do what you don't want to do. It's really that that simple. Creating boundaries is really all about knowing what you want, how you feel, what makes you uncomfortable, and deciding that you're not going to do it, go there, or talk to those people. That's it. I'm not going to tolerate this behavior, period. You just have to learn how to say no. So whenever you come up with the solutions for the situations that you identified in number 1 and number 2, when you come up with solutions to how to deal with those things, that's the boundary. Now, here's the key, and this is where it really gets tough. You have to enforce these boundaries. There's no purpose in creating them if you're not going to enforce them. You have to enforce the boundary. You have to basically create the boundary and say, you know what, I'm not going to date basketball players anymore. It just seems like when I date basketball players, it's just not the type of relationship I want. I don't get enough attention, whatever. I don't like the lifestyle, whatever it is. If that's the boundary, if that's what you're determining is going to resolve this issue for you, then enforce it. So the next time you meet that sexy, tall, lean, juicy looking basketball player, don't throw your boundary out the window and be like, well, let me just try it one more time. Okay. Because if you do that, you're not respecting your boundary. So why should anyone else? If you created a boundary with your children that you expect them to listen to you and do what you say, and you don't want to say it twice, you want them to do it the first time, you have to create a consequence. That's the boundary. If you don't do what I said the first time, here's what will happen. Okay, so the next time they don't do what you say the first time, you have to enforce, in that situation, the consequence. You have to. If you don't, then you just threw your own boundary out of the window. If you don't, then they won't do what you tell them to do. They don't respect you because you don't respect yourself enough, period. People are only going to treat you how you allow them to treat you. People are only going to do what you allow them to get away with. You have to just say no. That's essentially what a boundary is. A boundary is the word no. And sometimes a boundary isn't the word. Sometimes the boundary is your energy. Your energy says no. Your attitude says no. The way you carry yourself says, don't even come at me with that bullshit. That's what a boundary is. Now, I will say that when I first started creating boundaries, this is just my personal experience, I still wasn't comfortable enough saying no to people. I wasn't comfortable enough having difficult conversations with people. So for me, what worked was to email people or write a letter or send a text. And a lot of people say, oh, well, that's immature. You just need to have a conversation. Well, yeah, you do, but you can graduate to that place. Okay. When you first start trying to do something new, it doesn't always feel comfortable. Sometimes at first it feels a little like you're walking in uncharted territory. If you're a person who really doesn't like confrontation, or you're nervous that it's going to turn into an argument, or you're nervous that you're going to piss off this person, like your kids or your spouse or your parents, and you're nervous about it because these are really deep, intimate relationships with people you love and you care about. Sometimes when you're in those situations, it is difficult when you're first stepping out there and you're first learning to create boundaries for yourself. It can be a little difficult. In those situations, queens, be totally okay with a text, with an email, with a letter. Don't let anybody tell you it's immature. Now, again, you do need to slowly but surely evolve to the place where you can have a conversation, because that is the mature way. But everybody is on a different path of their journey. Not everybody is at the end of their journey or have been practicing boundaries for 5 years or 10 years. People who have been practicing their boundaries for a longer period of time, a lot of times they feel more comfortable communicating and a little more comfortable saying no. But if you're just starting, you may not. So it's totally okay. Don't let anybody try to make you feel bad about that. The most important part about boundaries is being able to enforce them. Now, where you get to enforcing your boundary is actually where your confidence, your self-worth, your self-love, and your self-esteem come into play. Because if you continue to choose not to enforce your personal boundary, it means that you're choosing something else over what's best for you. So whatever reason it is that you're uncomfortable enforcing the personal boundary, you're putting that reason or that thing or that person above yourself. You're basically saying that your self-worth, your self-esteem, your emotional well-being, how you feel, your peace is not more important than having a difficult conversation, or than having someone potentially be mad with you, or with having someone potentially look down on you, or be disappointed in you, or be frustrated with you. Let me tell you something, queens. If you have a person in your life who is not immediately open to discussing how you feel and what you need and what's best for you, if that pisses someone off, you need to get rid of their ass immediately. Seriously. You really, really do. Because it means that they don't have any respect for your feelings and how you feel. And that's just not a great relationship to continue to grow. It means that that person does not value you. Now, because of the fact that you may not be valuing yourself enough could be creating that problem. But I'm telling you, if you're here, it means that you're starting to realize that you need to do some work on yourself. And when you go to do some work on yourself and do some self-improvement because you need to self-preserve, if someone around you does not support that, makes you feel bad, makes you feel guilty, tells you that you're wrong, that is a huge red flag. And you really need to pay attention to that. Don't sweep that one under the rug, okay? So this is also an opportunity for you to reevaluate the relationships and the people and the circumstances that you have in your life. If you're constantly being taken advantage of, if you're afraid to express yourself and create boundaries because you think it's going to piss someone off, you have to reevaluate that position. The other side of that is sometimes your fear of standing up for yourself and creating boundaries is all in your mind. The people around you love the shit out of you. If you really did open up and tell them how you felt, they would make immediate and drastic changes to ensure that you were comfortable and that you were happy and have a strong emotional well-being. Some people love the shit out of you. They're just waiting for you to create the boundaries. They're just waiting for you to set the rules. So sometimes your fear is all in your mind, thinking that it's going to create some sort of rejection or some sort of confrontation or argument. A lot of times all of that shit is in your head. It's not even real. It's not even happening. It may not ever happen. So I want you queens to really think about that, but make sure that you really put the most effort of this exercise into the enforcing of your boundaries. Okay, so let me summarize really quickly because I'm a little all over the place in this episode and I apologize. I just get super duper passionate about my queens and making sure that you queens are not in situations with people who don't value you. My whole goal here is to make sure that we as queens really understand our worth and really understand our value. So I get really super passionate. Okay, so let me just summarize really quickly how to create emotional boundaries. The first thing, identify the people and situations that upset you, that drain you, that hurt you, anything that makes you feel like what's going on doesn't resonate with your spirit. Just write that stuff down. And then for each one of those things, identify what it is about it that makes you feel icky or uncomfortable, whatever it is. If it's a person that you wrote down, what is it about that person that makes you feel whatever it is that you're feeling that you don't like? If it's a situation or a circumstance, what is it about the situation or circumstance that makes you feel something that you just don't like, that doesn't resonate with your spirit, that doesn't feel like, hey, this is how I want to be treated, or this is the situation that I want to be in? Identify that. And then for each one of those things you identified, then write down a solution. Hey, how can I stop this from happening? How can I prevent this person from treating me this way? Write that down. And if you don't know how, if you don't even know how to create a solution, here are some examples. You have to communicate with the person and just tell them that this isn't something you're tolerating or something that you like or enjoy. You can also just not answer the phone when they call, not respond to the email when they send it, not respond to the text message when they send it. You can avoid going certain places. You cannot date certain types of people. You cannot be around certain types of people. You cannot talk to certain types of people. These are boundaries. Now, most of these would come after the communication, depending on how much you value the person or the circumstance. Most of these come after you've already tried to communicate your boundary and the person just isn't respecting it. So when you write down the solutions are the actual boundaries. After you've created the solutions, which now you understand are boundaries, now you have to enforce them, which means that every time someone attempts to step over the boundary, you have to let them know that this is unacceptable behavior. And this doesn't have to be done via confrontation. This can be a conversation. It can be a text. It can be however you feel comfortable addressing it. Again, if you don't feel comfortable communicating with a person for whatever reason, I don't care what it is, don't let anyone make you feel bad for not feeling comfortable communicating. If you're not there yet, communicate the best way you know how, but just communicate. It doesn't help for you to ignore and it doesn't help for you to avoid, because those two things are the go-to things that a lot of people run to, is avoidance, withdrawal, and ignoring. Now, there's a time and a place. Let me be clear, because I don't want anybody to get confused. There's a time and a place for withdrawal. There's a time and a place for ignoring, and there's a time and a place for cutting people off. The time and the place is usually appropriate where you've attempted to communicate this shit over and over and over again, and the person is just not paying attention to what you're trying to communicate. They don't seem to be respecting the boundaries that you've set. Now, when you get to that point, then yes, it does make sense to stop communicating. That's when the withdrawal and the ignoring and all of that good stuff come into play. So I wanted to clear that up. Again, it's kind of off topic, but I wanted to clear that up. Okay, so make sure you enforce the boundary. They don't matter if you don't enforce them. And again, this is the hard part. You have to make demands that this is how you will be treated. Know your worth, queens. That's what this is all about. This is all about knowing your worth. This is all about self-preservation, because as women, we have to understand that we are the nurturers that God created for this earth. We're the ones who people come to feel good, to have their problems resolved, to fix things, to talk about things. We're the givers of life. It's knitted into our DNA. It's so natural for us. That's what we do. We nurture. But understand, queens, that when you're constantly nurturing all day, you're nurturing your friends, you're nurturing your family, you're nurturing your children, you're nurturing your spouse, you're nurturing your coworkers, you're nurturing random people that you just meet throughout the ins and outs of life. You are a constant nurturer. It takes energy to nurture. You're literally pouring energy into everything and every person that you nurture all day, every day. And if you don't learn how to preserve some of that energy for yourself, you will feel drained. You will feel overwhelmed. You will feel unappreciated. You will feel taken advantage of. You will feel used. You will feel like you're consumed with drama. You will feel like you have the weight of the world on your shoulders. And I'm telling you, queens, you have to create the boundaries so that all of that shit doesn't get in all at the same time or too quickly for you to recover. I'm not saying that we aren't going to be nurturing. Of course we are. It's what we do. It's who we are. What I'm saying is you only have but so much energy a day. Preserve some of it. And the way that you preserve some of your energy for yourself is to create boundaries. Close the gate when enough is enough. Close the door when you're not doing any more talking. Just know when to say no. So queens, I hope that was helpful for you all. You queens know I love you so, so much. If I didn't love you, I wouldn't take the time to do this. It's okay. I love you queens so much. I really, really do. I hope that this was helpful this week. I have some really good stuff for you coming out next week. So stay tuned for the next episode. Please share All Queens Army with your friends, with your family, anyone that you think would get something out of this, anyone that you think could use some assistance, some help, some motivation, some build up, some pump me up. Just let them know that, Breizy Time curses a little. So if they have those virgin ears and they're super sensitive, maybe this isn't for them. But overall, queens, I would really appreciate if you could share episodes and just talk about it. Tell people what we're over here doing on the All Queens Army podcast and in our queen community. I love you queens so, 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 so much. Make sure you tune in to next week's episode. Make sure you check out Thursday's blog that's going to be coming out really soon. I love you so much. I hope you have a wonderful day. If you need to reach out to me, if you need some questions answered, if you need some support from me directly, you can always reach me at Breizy at All Queens Army. That is BREIZY at allqueensarmy.com. I love you queens so much. I hope you have a wonderful day. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the All Queens Army podcast. If you want to connect with Breizy Time and the All Queens Army, be sure to follow them on IG and Facebook at All Queens Army. Or head over and check out the All Queens Army YouTube channel. Until next time.